mean, can you imagine any of your, TAFEs that you deal with or part of or associated with? Do you think that they've got some kind some of them might have the capacity, not across the board, but in certain departments, to actually start putting their toe in this kind of water?
I guess I think the frame, I guess it's a TAFE and British training.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Yes.
Not as a top.
Oh, no, it could be anyone.
I know there's a number of taken back over the room. So what do you think about that concept?
We'll redo that now.
Okay, that's good.
It's successful. We believe in teachable moments with our students down in childcare field. I can give you an example. 8 years ago, a trainee, I was she was on a Cert 3 training here, and there was a group of two. This is childcare, sorry. They're on corruption. So it was a 2 to 3 year old group. She was they were going off the bed, so after rest time. Our group leader left. She left and another group leader was coming in. And you can imagine back then, it was 16 2 to 3 year olds and there was nothing else in the room. Do you know what that means to 2 to 3 year olds? That's right!
Yes.
So they were racing around and I actually said to the training, could be 10 years ago now, and I said to her, what do you think? What do you think you should do? What? Oh, maybe put some activities out. Okay, that sounds a good idea. Okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, 2 years ago, she rang. She's now a director of the childcare centre. She said, I've never forgot that day. Never have forgot. So it's teachable moments. It's practical experience. So it's, and within our own organisation, we actually, with our administration staff, we actually talk to them and see what they need and what needs and they want to press.
I think the tricky thing is I'm from Griffith University, so we have 42,000 students.
Yes.
We have 52 schools and about 300 courses, So if the VC says, okay, let's do this. Every single program at Griffith needs to have some work integrated learning component. That sounds like a great idea. And then you start talking, so there's the teaching, the nursing, that already have their thing.
Yeah.
And then you got, logistics, like business is a huge faculty and it's not as structured. And actually to do this practically, then it's my role to link with organisations. So you get somebody from a business group, you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting you say that because one of the big issues in the UK at the moment is that we've had this endless battle about preparing young people for college, university and whatever. For college and university for their employment. And what's increasingly come out, the big employers body, the UK Commission on Employment Skills, has just issued a major report for the Youth Inquiry, basically saying to employers, okay, colleges and universities and schools have gone more or less as far as they can if you don't provide a work experience element. If you don't provide work placement, then you can't expect to make any more progress. So over to you, employers. I think that kind of challenges. I think the other thing is, I would never suggest that the whole of Griffith University apply into this in one go.
I know. Well, there's a goal by 2013. But about the employers thing, then the Fair Work Act, the Australian Fair Work Act came out, and there's a clause in there that says if the work experience is not directly related to a course, so it's not assessed, and part of their university course, it's illegal to have a non-paid. And so all of a sudden we were back to zero, where there were some companies like a journalism. I know there was somebody like a member of parliament or some person who said, look, it would be nice to have a journalism student who come in 1 day a week. And the students were happy to do that, but now it's illegal unless it's actually part of an assessed course. So there's lots of issues with it. Like the idea, I don't think anybody would say it's a bad idea to have people learning on the job while studying or while they first start. But it's a really tricky concept to actually make it practical at large numbers.
Let me give you just 2 examples of the Scottish Skill Utilisation projects. One of which is of that kind, or is in that sort of traditional ballpark area of work placement, of employability and improving the match between what the system turns out and what the employers want or need. But then one that's completely off the wall and really rather surprised me by being successful. If you'd ask me to guess which of the 12 projects would fail, it would be the second one I'll describe, and actually it seems to be very successful. First one was the Open University. The Open University is our distance learning university. It operates across the UK as a separate Scottish arm. It was decided a few years back that in Scotland, all supervisory staff in residential care homes of any kind would need to have a degree. Well, most of these people didn't have a degree, so the Open University stepped in and provided distance learning with some face-to-face. And it was very successful. The supervisors were many of which got very poor learning records, very few qualifications in the past, were extremely successful in getting their degree. But the problem was the traditional problem. And many of you will guess in this room, their job didn't change. So they actually acquired quite a lot of new skills. This wasn't accreditation for prior learning, this was new skills. And their jobs hadn't changed a bit. And their managers still saw them as supervisors. And although they'd now got a degree, it didn't matter, they were still going to do the same old job. So the Open University volunteered to have a go with their next cohort of trying to help not only train the students, but also to try and change the nature of their jobs by talking to the organisations that employed them about how you might enrich that role, and trying to make visible to their employers the new skills that these people were acquiring. Quite a tricky thing to do, but it seems to have been fairly successful. And again, one of the things I'll give to Wallace is the evaluation report of the skill utilisation project that my centre did for the Scottish Funding Council. So for those of you who decided you think this might be interesting, you can read it. And there's quite a lot about how the OU went about this. It seems to have been quite successful. It seems to be that the managers are now looking at their supervisors in a different light, saying, these people have got capabilities we're not using. This is really stupid. We could actually save ourselves a lot of time and some money by actually beginning to broaden their job role, give them some more responsibility and use the skill they've got. Because they're not the same people as they used to be. They've actually changed through learning. The Off-the-Wall project, which I would have put a fair amount of money on failing, was won by the Glasgow School of Art. Glasgow School of Art are an art college, staffed by the sort of people you imagine are in an art college. They live in a beautiful, grade 1 listed Art Nouveau René Mackintosh building in the centre of Glasgow. They decided to take the notion of creativity and creative thinking out to a bunch of manufacturing firms, most of them sort of rather low-tech manufacturing firms, and get a vertical slice of the workforce from the managing director right down to the shop floor to work through together how creative thinking techniques could transform their business. Now, I have to say that I was, as I said, mildly sceptical and would end in anything other than a lot of tears, but it actually seems to have been profoundly successful, partly because the art school staff are actually very skilled and they do seem to understand. It looks at this kind of work and does most of the management of it has existed for 6. And I've sat on it from the start. The Scottish system has always been different. I mean, Scotland has always had a different education system. I mean, 4-year degrees, you leave school at 17 or 18 if you're going to university. TAFE delivers a lot of higher education. It delivers a lot of sub-degree courses on its own, and it delivers a lot of degrees by doing the first 2 years in the college and the next 2 years in a local university, which is called articulation, which was one of the reasons why the colleges found it quite easy to set up consortia with universities to do some of these skill utilisation projects, because they are very used to working with their local university. So it's quite an integrated system, and it's always placed at quite a high level of trust in the institution, in return for the institutions being quite sophisticated in the way they deal with their stakeholders. That's built up over time.
Does the Scottish model work? Is it getting some runs on the board, or is it still?
Well, the problem is how you count the runs. I mean, at one level, you could say that Scotland's outperforming England because it's plainly achieving, producing high levels of qualification in England. But it's not. Where the runs are not going on the board that matters is in economic terms, in terms of GDP and whatnot. What I'd say is that I think the Scottish model encourages much better linkages between colleges and universities and employers, because the the governance model pushes them to do that. They're not always looking at government targets and saying, well, forget everything else, all we have to do to get our money is meet the government's targets. That's what happens in England, and it's not been a very productive way of managing a very large sector. So the Scots moved away from that because they could see what a disaster it was, and they could see that it would not allow them to meet the goals they've got. And I think the other thing is that, although Scotland's obviously assets, it's not that small. To people who live in Australia, it will look quite tiny in terms of its physical space, but it is quite a big country in terms of the fact that large chunks of it are fairly inaccessible. But the Scottish society, the way in which Scotland works, is that it's very well networked. Employers know that I'm a college principal. The funding council know all of the 40 heads of the table to colleges by first name. The minister can call them into a room, sit down with them and have a chat. You can't do that in England. You've got 400 table principals. All the minister can do is harangue them in a large lecture theatre and then go before anyone asks any awkward questions. It's a completely different relationship. So Scotland's actually very well networked, and that actually allows the kind of trust and management relationships and the kind of relationships with stakeholders that England finds it much harder to do. One of the things that I look at in Australia with not a great degree of concern, but just a little degree of concern, is the enthusiasm at the moment by federal government saying, we would like to take greater charge of that. We would like to run it centrally and then the states do the delivery. I actually think there are problems, particularly in countries as big as this, about the coordination issues that happen. There's quite a lot to be said. The systems are small enough in terms of population size for people to be able to network and exchange information well. Because that's really what makes the Scottish system trundle along in ways that mean that most of the stakeholders are fairly happy most of the time. And that's a difficult thing. Look, there are diseconomies of scale, is what I find.